I give you a lesbian enemies to lovers story about a magic queen and a 7-foot tall hunter with a longbow taller than she is, and you give me your attention span for the next 10 minutes. What's up, guys? I'm Sushi, and I love talking about lore from the video game Destiny 2, and it's Pride Month, so if you want to hear about some of the queer stories from Destiny, then don't worry, I got you. Let's break it down. By now you probably know Mara Sov, Queen of the Simps, but if you've been living under a rock, Mara Sov is not only Queen of the Awoken people, she's also their creator, and one of the most morally and emotionally complex characters Bungie has ever written. The Awoken are a subhuman species that was born from a singularity created in the clash of light and dark during the collapse of humanity, shaped and reborn inside of a pocket universe through the power of Mara's sheer will. Basically, she's the original manifestation girly. For literal billions of years inside this pocket dimension called the Distributary, Mara kept it secret that she was the true first of the Awoken and the shaper of their existence. She allowed that title instead to be falsely claimed by the first queen, Alice Lee. Because of this lie, the Awoken people went through centuries, if not millennia, of political strife and conflict, with the opposition being led by a woman called the Diacerum, who accused Alice Lee of deicide, stating that because she was the supposed first, she had denied them the possibility of godhood and was therefore responsible for all of the suffering of the Awoken people. Eventually, the Diacerum went mysteriously missing after going to visit Mara and was never heard from again. It's at this point in the story that we meet Sjur Eido, a devoted paladin to the Diacerum, and it's also at this point that I am going to start reading some passages directly from the text because honestly, the writing is just so stellar that you need to hear it for yourself. Now, in the court of one of the scribes, there appeared a woman of stellar height and furious wrath, armed with a bow that could only be strung if she twined it around her body and used her whole mass to bend it. "I am Sjur Eido," said the woman, "and I accuse Mara of the ancient murder of my lady the Diacerum. In my saddle I have a weapon with only one death remaining in it. Take me to Mara and I will use it on her." The scribes consulted and said to each other that this foul murder might prevent another Theodicy war. So they gave Sjur Eido all their knowledge to hunt Mara. Into this feast of ideas came Sjur Eido, searching for the woman who had turned Queen Pin to Ecolaism. Sjur smoldered with an ancient fury, for another thing that the immortal may nurture is everlasting vendetta. Sjur Eido deduced who among the queen's court must be a disguised Mara Sov. She followed the hooded figure to her laboratory and watched Mara go to work soldering a makeshift bolometer to search for signs of primordial gravity waves. Sjur Eido's fury and grief wedded themselves against Mara's thoughtless grace and ancient beauty, until at last her heart unseamed itself and spilled its hot blood in a shout. "Mara Sov," she cried, throwing down her Maltac Matter laser between them. "I cannot live while you live, but I cannot bear to kill you. I challenge you to a duel to the agony. I will fight your most beloved companion to the death and leave you forever maimed, or else die in the attempt." So basically, Sjur Eido took one look at Mara, fell in love with her, and couldn't stand to kill her, and honestly, I can't even blame her. Mara could not refuse this challenge, so she appointed her beloved brother, Uldren Sov, as her champion, and Sjur and Uldren prepared to face each other in 3 rounds of varied combat in a duel to the death. The next passage comes from just before the commencement of their first duel and reads as follows. "Before they began, Sjur Eido tore away the sheer curtain over the gardener's nook and looked in on Mara Sov. 'Are you afraid?' she whispered, half in hatred, half in admiration, all in awe. 'Do you sweat? Does your breath come short?' Mara pressed her hand to Sjur's faceplate and left no stain. She held Sjur's gauntlet to her heart so Sjur could feel her steady pulse and even breath. 'You don't care about him?' Sjur pressed her. 'It would mean nothing if I maimed him?' 'You ask the right questions,' Mara said, 'but of the wrong sibling.' Then Sjur understood that she fought a man who would always express his love through loss and ordeal. The first duel resulted in a tie, and each of the champions lost one of the subsequent rounds, so the entire duel was considered a tie. This essentially amounted to failure for Sjur, who was now subject to the wrath and ruling of the woman she had come to assassinate. Her judgment was as follows. On the tarmac, Sjur Eido threw off her helmet and parachute and knelt before Mara Sov. "My lady," she said, "as I have fought your brother to a tie, I leave my fate in your hands. Be more kind to me than you were to my lady the Diasarum." "Rise, Sjur Eido," said Mara. "Let us take the stars together." In the following decades, Sjur became a loyal companion to Mara, serving as her personal guard and her political avatar. What I love so much about the development of their relationship is how much Sjur contrasts Mara in her mannerisms. Mara is characterized as this untouchable, ethereal enigma of a woman, aware of the power and influence she holds over people, and unafraid to leverage secrets and schemes to maintain that power. And yet constantly, Sjur is so unfazed by her posturing that Mara can't help fall in love with her. For all of Mara's profound, obfuscating speeches, Sjur was there to counter her with simplicity and wit. Their bond was one of mutual respect and admiration, and despite Sjur's position as her bodyguard, they were always equals within their partnership. Later, Mara would lead an armada of Awoken out of the Distributary and back into our universe. And in addition to now being subject to mortality once again, they also developed new paracausal abilities. Mara's already strong, unexplained powers were amplified, and she began her ascent into godhood. For the first time, Sjur, now officially titled as the Queen's Wrath, questioned whether Mara would prefer her as a subordinate instead of as an equal, as described in this next passage. This was when Sjur Eido, having spoken to Keldawaj and to Isilla, at last came before her queen. Kneeling, she said, "Your Majesty, Keldawaj says you are a god, for there is no difference between your desire and reality. Yet I know that you desire things before they ever become real. Isilla says that you are keeping a secret from your brother that he must never know. I think the secret is thus. You are now a god because one day you will become a god. And a god is not temporal. Your brother is not a god because he will never become a god. Shall I worship you?" "Sjur," Mara said, falling to her knees, clutching her beloved's face between shaking hands. "Sjur, on the day you worship me, you cannot love me anymore, for to worship is to yield all power, and I cannot love that what has no power over me." "I see," Sjur Eido said. "Then to me you are not yet a god." Although in time the knowledge of what Mara would become pushed them apart, it was a kind and happy push, as a friend might urge a beloved companion onward to a distant opportunity, and their days together were spent gladly. The last passage I want to read is a beautiful full circle moment when Mara finally reveals to Sjur Eido the truth about the Awoken's rebirth and the deceit that led to the death of the Diasarum and Sjur's eventual quest for vengeance against Mara. "Okay, Your Majesty, what did you do that made Alice Lee throw blackberry tea in your face?" "I was first," Mara says, and she explains the missing half, the first half of the sentence. "I made the rules and initial conditions that deceived her into believing she herself had decided." It ends like that, where the rest picks up. Sjur Eido looks at her in expressionless silence. Sjur Eido's hands stroke the seam between Mara's skin suit and the glossy petals of her helmet. "Long ago, this woman betrayed her oath and went to serve the Diasarum, a woman who cried out in anguish at the curse of physicality and the possibility of suffering. Long ago, this woman threw away her whole life to punish the highest crime she could imagine, the denial of transcendent divinity to those who might have claimed it." "You're the devil," Sjur said. "You're the lone power who made death. You allowed the possibility of evil. You might be responsible for more preventable suffering than anything that has ever existed." Mara cannot shake her head or even nod. "Well," Sjur says, "if you hadn't, none of us would be here. I guess I don't see what else you could have done if you cared about those we left behind. If you wanted us to be able to go back and help in the fight." She leans forward and very gently kisses the inside of her helmet where it meets Mara's. In her mind, in that place that is bound to all other Awoken, Mara feels the touch of gentle lips. After many years, Sjur eventually dies while in service to the queen, a death which is attributed to the Nine. Her body was entombed in the Tangled Shore in an area known as Sjur's Rest, but her disappearance has always been shrouded in mystery. Mara herself refused to build a statue to Sjur in the Dreaming City because it is against Awoken culture to build a statue to those who are still living, and she instead planted a tree in her honor, which is a tribute to those who are lost. Eventually, Mara would build a statue of Sjur inside Elisinia, her throne world in the Ascendant Realm, and the staging area for the Shattered Throne dungeon. She returned to the statue often for comfort, sitting under the gaze of her lover and protector. Somehow, this statue seemingly provided an anchor for a part of Sjur's consciousness, which eventually granted us the famed Wish-Ender bow, which was lost but never recovered from her body. While this seems to be the end of their story, there is a very real possibility that Sjur may eventually return. Her statue within the Ascendant Realm spoke to us on many occasions, making references to her failure to her queen and how she will return to rectify it, that she is lost but will find her way home, and so on. And further, there's many references made within the lore, even as recently as Into the Light, that hints at Sjur being lost, but eventually returning. After all, Mara herself died and returned to life through the power of her throne world in the Ascendant Realm. So it's not unfounded to think that Sjur Eido might do the same. For now, we can only hope that one day we will witness the return of this great huntress and see Mara reunited with her once assassin and greatest love. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you so very much. And if you enjoyed the content, please feel free to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment on your theories about Sjur Eido's return, and I will see you all next time for more Destiny lore.